it is 6:30. So thank you very much to Travis to making that clear that it is the official start time of our regular meeting of June 5th, 2023. I'm Megan Emery. I am the vice chair, but I will be the acting chair tonight with our chair who is attending virtually. And we're very glad that she's with us tonight after a successful procedure. So she is, she never shirks her duty. She had every excuse, but no, she's here with us. So we're going to start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like Steve Locke to please lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And for all of you, Steve Locke is our fire chief and our deputy city manager. So that's a big mouthful, and it means that he does a lot for our city. So thank you for leading us. And I'm now handing the mic over to Jessie Baker, our city manager. She's going to give you all instructions for exiting in case of emergency.
So thank you for being here tonight. For the people in the room, you can go out either side of the rear of the auditorium, left to right, and then turn left to right to get out of the building in an emergency. For those participating online, thank you for joining us as well. If you would like to be recognized at any point during the night, you can indicate so in the chat or turn your camera on. Otherwise, we are not monitoring the chat for content. Thank you.
All right, and our next agenda item is the agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order of the agenda items? Yes, Andrew.
So, Megan, could I suggest that we talk about ash trees if possible?
Sure.
And I only suggest that because I think time is of the essence to potentially deal with them this year.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So we'll put that under other business if there's no objection to that. All right, any other things that people would like to add or change? Okay, very good. And this is now the time for comments and questions from the public on items not related to the agenda. And please, would you come up and press the button to make sure that the light is bright green, and then put the mic right in front of your mouth, and there we go. We're ready. If you could please state your name, and we're ready to listen.
Yeah, sure. It's bright green. So my name's Ann Obelnicki, and I'm a resident of South Burlington, and I think you all got emails from me. I've heard back from some of you. And I wanted to just comment a little bit on the proposal for the rental registry and especially regulating short-term rentals. I'm currently a host of 2 short-term rentals in South Burlington. I rent out an ADU in my home and also a single-family home that's across the street from my house. And they're really the primary source of, well, right now, really the only source of income that I have for my family. My family at my house consists of just me and my 4-year-old and my 9-year-old. And what I'd really love to see with the city council is some discussion of how changing the regulations will affect hosts and who those hosts are. And I haven't seen a lot of discussion of that so far. For myself, I went into this, made significant investment of my money that I had set aside for retirement to get into short-term renting, and as proposed, as currently proposed on the last time that the ordinance was handed out, it would shut down not my ADU but my single-family home across the street from me, and that would be a really significant financial blow to myself. And I know that there's other people in South Burlington who are similar things, and it would also be a significant blow to them. And as I said, I made this decision because it was legal. It is still legal, and it's not something that can pivot really quickly by next April, and I can do something else with the property that would have any profit. Actually, I'd probably have losses if I pivoted to long-term renting on that property in particular. So I guess I'm here to just speak up on that issue and hope that you'll take a minute, not necessarily today since it's not on the agenda, but as you go forward and find out what those consequences are of the things that you're proposing and how they'll affect, normal Vermonters who live in South Burlington and are trying to piece together livelihood in a legal upfront way. So that's what I'm here to say. So
Thank you, Anne. And I believe we're going to be getting back to the ordinance in July, or do you have certain?
Yeah, it's the second, right now it's scheduled for the 2nd August
In
because of
August.
the kind of schedule over the next 2 months.
Okay, very good.
okay, well, I'll be happy to come back then too. But I know a lot happens in between, so I just want to put that in your ear. Thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else in the audience like to come forward? All right, if you'd like to speak to us online, you can just turn on your camera or turn on your microphone and I will recognize you. All right, very good. So we'll carry on then to item number 5, which is counselors' announcements and reports on committee assignments. And I'm just going to start from my right and move left. So Andrew.
Aside from my 2 weeks in the Allagash, which we can discuss another time, I don't have a report.
Okay, very good, very good. Tim.
Thank you. I attended 2 subcommittee meetings interviewing prospective members for different city committees. And I also attended 2 graduations in my family, one in Boston for my son for his graduate degree and one for my son at Champlain College for his successful completion of the teacher apprenticeship program, the TAP program. And and he'll be teaching in the high school next year as well. So that's working out well. And I also ran the marathon, but I only ran one leg, so no big deal, just 4 miles. But it's always great to participate in that and see all the runners come in. So thank you.
You had a beautiful day for the marathon.
It was
too.
it was it was a little warm
It was
towards
a
the
little
end,
warm,
but
yes.
other than that, the humidity wasn't too high, so it was good.
Yeah, good, good. Tyler.
Yeah, I attended as with Tim and Councilor Chalnick and Helen to some of the subcommittee meetings for various appointments. Have heard from a number of constituents on it. Well, a positive update as a follow-up to a previous conversation that we had regarding bike thefts, and I apologize, I'm not. I just want to make sure I'm being accurate, but. We had an amazing week last week with the Burlington Bike Recovery Group recovering 159 bikes over the course of the last 7 days.
Wow.
So it's an entirely grassroots effort led by a few constituents in the city, and they're doing a remarkable job. And so I just wanted to recognize them for all of their efforts in the coordination with the South Burlington Police Department.
Was that just in South Burlington? 159 bikes?
That was in South Burlington and Burlington. I don't have the
But
exact.
still, that's a lot of bikes.
It's a lot of it's a lot of bikes.
Yeah, it is.
But I don't have the exact breakdown, but I do think it's worth noting that a significant percentage, not single digits, but at least 20% were recovered within South Burlington or had something to do with the city of South Burlington. So I thought that was notable.
How did you locate them, Tyler?
They reached out to me.
No. How did you locate the bikes?
Oh, I'm not. To be clear, this is the group, not myself. They're just
Locate the bikes.
a lot of it is just leveraging the power of social media. So when they have their members who see a bike that looks out of place, they take it upon themselves to take a photo, share it. If it's practical or safe, they'll take a photo of the serial number, so it's purely organic. And so moving forward, I just want to make sure that they're working in lockstep with Chief Burke and the police department. Again, we want to be careful that there's a lot of vigilance, but I want to make sure that it's done right and that vigilance could. Not saying this could be the case. We don't want to turn to vigilantism where people are actively snagging back bikes. But so far, the coordination has been great, and on both sides, I'm really excited about that.
Nice.
Got some feedback in addition to Ms. Obelnicki. Did I capture that correct? Ann, who just spoke, from a couple other constituents who had similar concerns regarding how we. I think the thing that I heard most clearly and cogently, there were two concerns. One was, again, what's the impact of the rental registry? What do we anticipate that will be on helping address? Like, what's the scale and the scope of the problem? That was the first thing that folks would like us to spend more time discussing. And the second thing was, could there potentially be either a grandfathered in clause or some form of application whereby folks like Ms. Obelnicki, who have leveraged themselves and are making this a source of their primary revenue, and who are really relying on this, is there some way, some vehicle that's practical, both from a financial perspective and also from an administrative perspective, to allow these folks to either get an exception, or whether we have an X number of units that are allowed that still allows us to meet our goals as a city. So I thought that would be appropriate for the next time we have those conversations, and I've been encouraging folks to engage in that dialogue then. Went to the O'Brien Farms groundbreaking, which was very exciting. Had the opportunity to speak with a lot of folks and bathe in the conversations and really be inspired by the conversations about the Vermont way of doing things, collaboration, and that things don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. And I thought a lot of those really resonated, and I think that they're exemplary of how we operate as a council, so that was exciting. And last but not least, heard from a number of concerned constituents who attended the school board meeting, not the school board meeting, excuse me, the donuts and discussion conversation. Is that the correct characterization of it? Yeah, like something along those lines.
Yeah.
And folks were very engaged, and it's something that I felt compelled to bring to everyone's attention. There are in my mind, an alarming number, and I don't have an exact count, but it's more than 20 individuals who have children that will be transitioning from 5th grade to 6th grade next year, who do not intend to enroll their kids at Tuttle, out of concerns that, there's a number of different concerns, not all of which I want to share. But I think the underlying thing that and that I felt and that was of concern to me was, is this going to be a long-term trend that we anticipate will continue over time? And if so, what are the implications? And how can we work together with the school board to ensure that we're not preventing this outflight of intellectual capital? And I don't want to be alarmist, but I guess where my red flags go up is this something that could potentially lead to a group of citizens wanting to start something along the lines of a charter school, which could have dramatic implications for our school district and how we work and operate. And it also underscored the importance of one of the frustrations that they mentioned were the facilities. And I think it's clear that we are, regardless of how we got there, we're at a position where we really need to put that on the radar. And that's something I'd like for us to continue discussing, and particularly to bring up as we start our vision and planning exercises over the course of the next couple of months.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Ellen?
Sure. I crammed a lot in before my procedure. So I did go to the O'Brien Farm groundbreaking and
Made a beautiful speech.
shared some remarks on behalf of the city. Yeah. I attended 4 subcommittee meetings interviewing a whole wealth of candidates for the community boards and commissions, and it's always heartwarming to see so many talented people interested in donating some time. We had a school city leadership meeting, and it was a very productive and excellent conversation. And we, Jesse was able to kind of bring the school board and superintendent, school board chair and the superintendent up to snuff with exactly what we are doing as a community to deal with the traffic on Market Street, the school exiting and entering. Traffic counts are going on Dorset and Market Street. And the city is actively engaged with families that were described 2 weeks ago, I guess, with having some problems or creating potentially some problems at our housing in the new city center. And I also went to a wonderful charter committee hearing, and it seemed quite well attended, although someone made the comment that most of the speakers were the old guard, myself included. But it was a very good dialogue about the different options, and some good questions I think were raised as the charter committee gathers the testimony or the feedback in order to incorporate those comments into their report back to us. So it was good overall.
Great. Thank you, Helen. And so I too attended some subcommittee hearings, but only two, along with Tim Barrett and Helen, of course. And I also attended an affordable housing committee meeting where we reviewed the draft of the affordable housing section in our city plan, our comprehensive plan, and the members were able to provide some feedback to Kelsey Peterson in our planning and zoning department. I also attended that charter review committee meeting that Helen spoke about, and I thought it was a really good discussion. And I've had some discussions since with residents on that, as well as on Hubbard, and I know that we'll be discussing both. I'm going to thank Jesse for giving me the credit. I guess I also set up a meeting with a resident representing other residents from the Garden Street Apartments. Lisa McDonald was there, and CHT representatives were there, with Jesse simply moderating. And it was an incredible discussion. I got to see the CHT staff up close and personal, and they're phenomenal. And I got to also hear from the principal at our Rick Marcotte Central School that there are no issues at the school, that school is of an incredibly positive learning environment for all of the children there. And despite some of the comments that were made on a public Facebook page, she cannot at all confirm any of those reports. In fact, she would renounce those reports. So that was a very good discussion. And I would just say, in general, with regard to our school district, it's phenomenal. And I have 3 children, 2 who have, just like Tim, made their way through this district and have landed incredible opportunities post-graduation. And I also have a 6th grader who, and that transition is very hard from 5th to 6th grade, as you know, as a parent of a 6th grader. And the responsiveness of the principal, of the teachers, and she got into the drama club, and every child will find their niche because there are so many niches to choose from in our school district, that what started off as kind of choppy waters in the beginning, she is swimming like a fish. And I have no doubt that she will meet with the same success that her big brothers did. It's a phenomenal district, and good luck to the families who wish to attend private schools. There are good private schools as well, but I certainly would not confirm any alarmist dialogue on the state of our public education system. We have phenomenal teachers, phenomenal administration, phenomenal support staff, phenomenal staff people, just to see what they did with regard to drama, and all of the, the custodial work that was done, as well as the parent volunteers and the kids. Just phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I just want to put that out there. And we have phenomenal residents. So we have all the partners in place. We have an amazing city staff, in addition to all of the school staff. And I just came out of my meeting last Thursday morning, just with a huge smile on my face, as did the resident, and just I don't know, floating out of the building, feeling just so at home here, and knowing that this was a home not just for me, but for people who have not been, given the same, I would say, just lucky breaks in life, perhaps, and just life experiences that weren't necessarily as conducive or as I've certainly had my rough spots, but anyway, I came out of that meeting here in City Hall on Thursday feeling just phenomenally proud, and that warm and fuzzy spot of South Burlington was very, very real for me. I have also been communicating with Ann Oblecki. I'm going to be meeting with her tomorrow. I want to save my remarks for a warned agenda item, but I tend to believe we're in a housing crisis and that short-term rentals should not be a source of primary income for our residents. So I will now turn it over to our city. Oh,
Can I make one announcement?
yes, please.
I'm sorry. I forgot to announce that if you haven't seen advertisements in various media, UVM is having a 2-day event called the RISE Summit.
Yeah.
It's the Research, Innovation, and Sustainability and Entrepreneurship Summit, and it's free. You have to sign in to register. So just go to UVM and search for, or just Google UVM and RISE, R-I-S-E. The only cost would be if you want to take a lunch. I think you have to pay for lunch, but the parking is free too. So I plan on going the 21st. Pat Leahy will be speaking and Kyle Clark will be speaking, and there are other panel discussions on both days. So it should be very interesting. So looking forward to it.
What are the dates of that again?
The 21st and 22nd of June this month.
All
How did we
right.
get into June?
That's a busy, busy time of year. Yeah. All right. And now for our city manager's report.
Great, thanks. Certainly a lot going on. So another kind of lengthy update. Apologies in advance. So Charter Committee survey and feedback. Many of you talked about, the form was really interesting. We do have a survey still out on the ground to try and get some of those other voices who may not have time and energy to come to a public meeting. That survey will be live through June 12th. We'll close it on June 13th. So far, we have 105 respondents to that survey, which is okay, pretty good. I think what's more interesting is that the average response time is 8 minutes, which means folks are really taking time and being thoughtful and providing interesting feedback, which is great. June is finalizing the grand list month. It's very exciting, very dorky month in municipal government. So for the council, you may hear from your residents, we are mailing out change of notices of change in value tomorrow. So those will be hitting mailboxes in the next couple of weeks for anyone whose assessed value is changing. Hearings are through June 21st. We then lodge the grand list with the state, get the education property tax rate back from them based on that grand list, and you will approve the tax rate at your July 10th meeting. Right now, the grand list is tracking higher than we projected with the FY24 budget. That may change as appeals come in. But what that would mean is a tax rate lower than you anticipated during your FY24 budget discussion. So more to come on that, but wanted to give you a heads up. There will be work done starting next Monday, the 12th. Is that next? Yes, next Monday, the 12th.
Yeah.
On the pressure reducing valve on the drinking water line under Nolan Farm Road. The homes that will be impacted by that temporary water shut-off will all be notified. Majority of work will take place outside of the roadway, but there may be periods of time where we need to close one road and or one lane, and the traffic will be delayed, but we anticipate that being very short. And if anyone listening or watching later has any questions about that, please feel free to call the water department at 864-4361, 864-4361. The final thing on that is the contractor will be staging some equipment at the parking lot at Hubbard Park. So if folks see construction equipment in there, it's for this project, not for anything related to Hubbard Park. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying it. So we want to thank CCRPC for their funding of our annual work plan to fund a bike ped master plan in FY24, which is really exciting. Also want to share that on Friday we had 3 police officers graduate from the Vermont Police Academy. That's a huge undertaking, many weeks of work. They now come home and do their field training with our officers and really learn South Burlington, and then are released onto the street. Really exciting about that is not only the 3 new officers joining us, but we had 1 officer get what is called the Eugene Giotti Award, which I'm going to read this because it's really lovely. It's an award that the fellow recruits, so the recruit class, votes on to nominate the recipient based on their demonstrated honesty, loyalty, motivation, and teamwork. So Officer Moore joining our ranks received that award at the academy, and then Lieutenant Bataille received the instructor award, which this is his 2nd time receiving that award. He's one of our police lieutenants, and is the lead criminal law instructor at the academy. So again, voted on by the recruits, award given to Lieutenant Bataille. 2 other things. One, there's a staff team of us starting to work with the developers on a development agreement for the relocation of Old Farm Road. That will need to come to the council in the next couple of months to approve the process by which they will construct that new road, and then we will relinquish the existing road. The road kind of takes a turn to the right, coming down into Kimball Ave. So much more to come on that. I just wanted to give you a heads up that a development agreement will be coming your way. And then finally, several of us are monitoring really closely the hotel return to pre-pandemic criteria program. We have a weekly call with the Agency of Human Services and service providers. We're anticipating some requests from the executive order that was issued on data around housing options in the state. And quite frankly, right now, we're not seeing a huge impact locally, but we are keeping our eye on it closely. So that's what I have. Thanks.
That's fabulous. And I have to say that I had a very social weekend, and I have to say, for a professor, we're usually homebody, bookish types, and so this was an unusual thing for me to have parties 2 nights in a row. And at one of them, I spoke with an entrepreneur who's in Burlington. He works with Keith Epstein from our Energy Committee, and he didn't know about Hillside East, so I filled him in. And he's like, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yes. And you should come check us out in South Burlington since he's in solar." So we just have to sell all of the things that are amazing about our community and sell it loudly and get out from my armchair with the books and go talk to people. So that's the lesson of Saturday night.
May I ask the manager a question about the signal work on Dorset Street? So it was supposed to start today, according to the signs that went from May 1st to May 15th to June 5th.
Yeah, there was some.
There was some work done?
No, there was some frustration about the scheduling.
Oh.
I
Okay.
don't know the details, but luckily
Okay.
Erica Quallen is here, so I'll turn it over to her.
Hi, all. Erica Quallen, Deputy Director of Capital Projects from Public Works. They have started staging their equipment, so it is behind the former Sears Automotive now, so you'll notice some stuff there. And it is still scheduled for this week. So they brought out their equipment either today or on Friday. I just know it was there when I drove down Dorset Street this morning, and it wasn't there last week when I left. But it is still scheduled for this week. They are planning to kind of start at the middle and move out and do a lot of the less invasive work that's out of the roadway at first, and then get to some of the bigger ticket items.
Sorry, the work that's scheduled to start this week, that's occurring at the intersection of in front of the Sears Auto Center, what was formerly?
That's just where they're staging their equipment right now. It's nice and central for the whole corridor to be able to get to it. It's going to depend as equipment comes in, which ones are for which intersection. We've had some pretty long lead times on equipment, but it's going to be primarily stuff related to like pedestrian infrastructure, getting things outside of the roadway itself that will be started and not really tackling the Williston Road intersection or the Kennedy Drive intersection until the rest of the equipment is there, so we don't have to keep open, close, open, close. So it'll be some of the more technology background stuff that they're going to be starting with, and then moving to the more visible, larger scale items.
Got it. And is there an ETA on when? I know it's. I'm asking back of the napkin. Are we thinking like, is this a 1-year project, 2-year project, 6-month project?
It will be done this calendar year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica.
All right. Well, thank you all. That's clearly a lot that's going on in the city here. So the next item is number 6, the consent agenda, and we will be approving, hopefully, 5 items. So that includes the disbursements, that's the bills of the city, minutes from April 3rd, April 17th, and May 1st. We're going to be approving the transfer of up to $40,000 of our fiscal year CIP funding from the lead service line inventory to valve replacement on Spear Street. Approving a bike ped grant application for the Heinsberg Road Shared Use Path, which will include moving 2 CIP, and that's capital improvement projects, to provide the match. And that would be from Kennedy Drive all the way to Williston Road. And the 5th one is authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a contract with Paul Frank and Collins PC for legal services in support of city center right-of-way acquisition, which has lots of complicated parts to it. So I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. And I do have an item of discussion or two. Does anybody else have?
I do. I have a very
quickly.
small thing.
Go ahead
You do
then,
too?
Tim.
Oh. In the disbursements, the first 2 lines are $2 for the Easy Pass on the New Hampshire DOT and $2 for an Easy Pass. I mean, when you get an Easy Pass, don't you just put $20 in it, it just deducts, and you don't? Did that get paid directly from the city, or? I was just curious because I thought it was an automatic deduction thing. So
The city doesn't have an Easy Pass,
Oh, it doesn't.
and firefighters went to Massachusetts.
but that was pay by plate, is what it was.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
And so while I had given them change, I threw some change in the car. I also said, just go through the high-speed lane, and
Yeah.
they'll just bill us for the toll.
But you have to do the text thing. You have to do the star 893 or something. like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
it's been so long since I've been through the New Hampshire tolls. I thought they just sent you the invoice for the toll, and if you paid within 15 or 30 days, it was the whatever it was. So it was total of $6 versus $3 worth of tolls. But that was why it was. But for the record, they did use my personal Easy Pass as well.
I only asked because I finally, after 5 years of going to Boston, plus out of school, going every month for 3 years with braces to where my mom lived down there, I finally got an Easy Pass, and I'm really proud of it now. I just want people to know I'm an Easy Pass user, and I blew it on the way home because I went into the toll lane. I was like, whoa, 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 I can't get out. And anyway, but I still went quickly through that. So I'm just blown away by the whole Easy Pass concept. Thank you.
It's like Easy Rider. Remember that 1970s movie? All right. Andrew.
Yeah, Jesse, just a quick follow-up. Was so Jesse and I just had a little back and forth about the budgeted amount for ash tree replacement. Was that to remove and replace, or was that just the replacement piece?
The number that's in the warrant this week is just the replacement of
So
those
removal
25.
was on top of that. Do you have
Removal we did in-house with existing staff.
Okay. So just to put in the new tree was $700 a tree.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Must have been nice sized trees.
2.5-inch diameter.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Helen or Tyler, do you have any questions or anything
Nope.
for discussion?
No, I do not.
I had a quick question. So the bike ped grant, that is, That's for Heinsberg. That connects Heinsberg Road to Kennedy.
It goes from Kennedy down to Williston Road. So it's the Heinsberg Road where there's an existing bike path, but it's true there are some routes that have made it uneven. It goes past Prouty. It goes past,
There's an
Simpson
existing-
Court.
Yeah, there's an existing on that stretch
There
of
is.
Heinsberg Road.
At least I've taken it. It's not
Yeah.
wide. It's narrow.
It's a combination of concrete in some places, asphalt in others. It goes by the sewer pump house at the corner,
Okay,
turn in the road.
I thought it was all just a sidewalk.
It's like a sidewalk, but
Well-
most of it's paved, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some parts of it are.
Okay, no,
Yeah. And they're applying for a VTrans grant, which is always a good thing.
yeah,
And and then swapping that out for the airport parkway. They're just kind of swapping it in our CIP.
in our CIP.
plan.
Okay.
Yeah, reorganizing things. Okay, my questions are, and I've already had answers, but whenever I communicate online, I always like to have it come out for public discussion as well. Had to do with those violation charges, and I'm wondering if it's because they didn't text. I don't know, but there was something like $55 violations for the Easy Pass, and
That was not ours. Ours was the $2 and $4. So I have to research anything else, but that was not ours.
yeah, yeah. So it's easy. So it's all alphabetized for us, and easy. You found it. Okay, so where is it? So it's under NJ actually. NJEZ.
Third page.
And gosh,
I'm pretty sure I know what that is now.
why is it not jumping on? Oh, here it's good. Oh, it's
Where is it?
just a minute.
Disbursements?
Yeah, disbursements. How come I don't see it?
Is it 55 and the other one 13?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
so-
no, both are 55. I thought. That's my memory.
That's what I recall as well.
Let me find it. Gosh darn. All right. Easy. The search isn't working either. Okay. It's before Ingram. Gosh darn. Hold on. It was on the short one. Yeah.
I think
Okay,
I know
here.
what
It is on page 3 of our packet. So it's NJEZ pass. First one was April 16, 2023. It says viol, VIOL, so I'm assuming it's a violation. $56.65. And the next line is for April 21st, 2023. Again, VIOL with a code. And then $56.85.
I think I know what it is, but I'm going to take a stab at it and I will confirm on the next couple days. But we had a member attend a training in Texas with an Enterprise rent-a-car, which is probably Wyatt's, New Jersey. And he had to take the car from the airport in Dallas or Austin
Yeah.
to the class. And I think he thought the tolls were included in the rental car. And that's how come it came as a separate charge than on the rental car charge. And I just processed, I just got it today. It finally, so it was for $55.
Yeah,
so
in
that's
some
why that
sense,
number sounds familiar
56.
to me through Enterprise. And it
Yeah.
could be the one way to the airport, and that was the return. And I just processed the one today
sense.
for the return. So I'm 99% sure that's what that is.
Thank you. That makes sense. It's complicated if you don't have an easy pass. You have to they do get you if you don't follow that within like 48 hours or something. You have to notify them or something.
But I think with a rental
Yeah.
car, it's even different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And then my second question had to do, we have a number of refunds on property taxes. And Jesse Baker, could you explain that to?
Sure.
Teresa?
So we are at the end, obviously, of the tax year. There are 4 different I mean, there are more than four, but four major categories of why we have tax overpayments. One is a taxpayer sets up automatic withdrawals on our online system, and the mortgage company continues to escrow, so it's double paid. And when we find those, we refund them, or when they're brought to our attention. The second is when a property changes hands and a buyer or seller doesn't attend to what was passed at closing and pays a full amount. We refund those. At times, a homestead is applied mid-year through the state, and they send us notice that that homestead has been applied, and we need to refund. Keep in mind, these are refunds on both the city and education side of it, because we collect both. And then if there's a settlement, an appeal at the state level, and a settlement at the state level, and we've received notice of that, we refund as well. So all four of those categories apply to different of the refunds that appear on your warrant this week. It does not mean we are not collecting what is owed to the city. It means somebody paid too much and we are returning that too much. We are fully collecting what we need to be collecting. We're just not keeping the extra.
Because one seems to be a legal firm. There are 4 different dates. So they're May 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. This is on page 9 of our packet, Floyd, under Floyd. And there are 2 refunds of $26,763.93, a repayment of $15,973.59, and a repayment of $2,633.50. So it just kind of stood out.
So that is a state's, I know that particular case is a state settlement.
Very good. Okay.
Can I just follow up with a question too? When you make the repayment, if it's after we have sent the really big checks over to the school for the education portion of those taxes, is it then computed so when we send the next installment, there's credit?
Yeah, it's trued up at the end of the year between the Agency of Education and our finance office.
Okay.
And then we might withhold money from the school to make that trued up, or does it usually work the other way? We owe them more.
It's not usually that we owe them more. It's usually that their next installment is lower than it otherwise would have been.
Okay, so all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much. And any questions? Yeah.
So you're finding a discrepancy in the check warrants that are enclosed in the agenda versus the Excel spreadsheets that were?
No discrepancies.
No, but where are you seeing that Easy Pass violation?
Oh, it's in the first set of the, it's the
It's
third
in the
page.
spreadsheet
The third
or it's
page.
in the agenda?
The agenda. Third
Okay.
page.
What page?
Third, so it's right after
Third
the
page.
agenda. So it's the first page of our supporting documentation.
Oh, in New Jersey. Oh, wait, so
So it's after LaPlante's Plumbing and Heating.
So it's page 3 of that one. Okay,
Yeah.
hold on. So what page is that page 9 of our,
No, page 3.
Page 3.
page 3 of the entire, no, of the
the
entire
packet.
agenda? What page is it?
Page 3.
Page 3.
Is the page 3 of the agenda? Okay, hold on.
Do you want me to come help you?
No.
I'm happy to.
I'm almost there. Okay, now I see it. Why are those not on the spreadsheet?
I don't know.
I don't think they're in the spreadsheets. Let me look again. There's no NJ. I mean, was it just a timing issue between when the spreadsheets were cut because they were cut before the warrants were added to the agenda?
Did you search? Do you have the spreadsheet open?
Excuse me?
Do you have the spreadsheet open?
Yeah.
Can you search for the dollar amount?
No, I searched for NJ
Oh,
and
it's-
the dollar amount. It's not
it's
there.
not coming up.
So I'm just wondering why there's
Yeah.
a missing value there. We can resolve that later.
I will resolve that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Because I would have caught that too.
You know, this is the one night that I told Martha, stay home. Enjoy the nice June night with your kiddos.
I'm glad I sent my email later in the afternoon for Martha's sake. But I'm sure we'll get the
I will.
answer,
Yes,
and we
we
will
will get the
report it
answer.
back to the
No,
public
indeed.
too. All right. And
Technically,
we don't usually take questions during the paying of the bills, but does it have to do with paying of the bills here, Michael, or a policy question? Because if it's a policy question, hold off. We're going to be talking about it under other business. See if you're up to staying till past 9:30. We're going to be talking about it. Or you can be online while you're at home with your head on the pillow. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. All right. Let us keep going. So we have a motion and a second, and I will now call the question. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 That's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thanks for all of the answers to our questions. As you can see, residents, we do not just spend your money frivolously. We check every I and P and Q. All right. Number 7, we're going to be interviewing candidates for the Development Review Board. And Jesse, if you could just start us off, and then we will call forward Quinn Mann.
As the council knows and the community likely knows, we have been going through a process of interviewing applicants for all boards and committees of the city over the last couple of weeks. The council will make final appointments on June 19th. We interview folks who are both incumbents on committees as well as new applicants. The development review, while the subcommittees kept the policy committees, the full council requested to interview all candidates for the Planning Commission and the Development Review Board because of their regulatory and statutory nature. So first tonight is the Development Review Board. Quinn has served on that board for 2 years, 1 year?
About a year and a half.
Yeah.
Came in October of 2021. Yeah.
We have 2 openings on that board. Quinn is the only individual who applied to serve on that board. This is a bit of a problem for our community in that this is a really important regulatory board. So we will be soliciting additional appointments if anyone is interested in ensuring that development in our community matches the vision and values established in our land development regulations. This is the commission for you, or the board for you. I will say that the council received a communication from the chair of the Development Review Board and the staff person from the Development Review Board talking about criteria that they would like to see on the board and singing the praises of Ms. Quinn. So that is the feedback received, but she is here to talk to you.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you for coming, Quinn. And I am going to just be asking questions on behalf of the council, but there could very likely be some follow-up questions, and you are also going to have the opportunity to ask us any questions you have.
Great.
Give
thank
us
you.
any feedback since you have some experience too. So the first question is, please explain your interest in this specific appointment.
So I've served for about a year and a half now. My kind of background, I studied environmental science at UVM and have been in environmental regulation ever since. Initially, I worked at the federal environmental regulation level, working for the state in the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, where I worked focused primarily on affordable housing projects and economic development projects. So really carried that work all the way through. And so when I came onto the position initially, I was working as a private consultant, working with federal agencies, doing environmental compliance work. And this position was really to kind of bring me back into the folds of Vermont local focused work because I had worked for the state previously. Since then, I've transitioned back to working for the state because I very much enjoy that, and I'm with Act 250 now. And so all to say is this position is very aligned with what I'm professionally and personally interested in. And now that my day job, if you will, is focused on, Vermont land use as well, what I've enjoyed, the aspect of it that I very much enjoy is in my day job, I'm not the decision maker. The commission's the decision maker. So in this role, I get to be the decision maker along with my other board members, obviously, at the local level.
And I will also just add that another reason why I'm drawn to the position, particularly in this community, and why I've enjoyed living here, is that the city has shows a lot of the values, and that is represented in the regulations themselves too. So it's a very easy position to be in, to kind of uphold these regulations that show that so well. So.
Thank you. Thank you. And what do you hope to accomplish with the continuation of your service?
Yeah, exactly. Kind of that. I know I gave a big mouthful there, but continuing to uphold the regulations as they're intended to fulfill values of the community. So, I've been on the board when there was a regulation change, and so we've seen in some places, us and the applicants kind of working out what new regulations mean, right? So there's more strict requirements around wetlands and what can be, approved in wetlands. So asking for more information, or, alternatives that they looked at, really vetting that before we just put that stamp of approval. Because I think, that's an example of, something that's really our role to look at. And then another piece kind of, that's on the natural resources side of thing. And then on the other side of that is, the focus on a pedestrian focused scale feel of things. And that's another thing I think myself and a lot of the other board members, we hone in on too, because we see the value in that, and really looking at proposals that come forward and saying, does that meet those regulations that are also kind of newer, and the applicants are, putting together proposals and having a back and forth about those types of things. So those are some examples of things that jump out.
Great, thank you. And tell us about how you've been working in this group, or in general in your various roles. What skills do you bring to the table here?
Yeah, I would say that I have the benefit of being a generalist. We look at a lot of different potential impacts under the regulations. My background is in environmental regulation, as I said, so I tend to hone in on those types of impacts and resource areas. But because of my background in general project review at the state and federal level, I have a sense of, traffic impacts and aesthetics and those types of things as well, although I wouldn't say they're my specialty. So I would say being a generalist is what I try to bring.
Great. And this is the time for any questions you might have for us, and then I'll ask the council if they have follow-up questions for you.
No additional questions. Thank you.
Any questions that you have for Quinn?
Well, I just want to say thank you. I think your skill set is just really terrific for this role. I'm wondering if you have any insights, and whether it would be appropriate to ask you, do you have insights into perhaps why we're not, are things working well on the board? Any sense of why maybe we're not seeing?
Yeah, I was very surprised to hear that, honestly. I came today and was like, oh, there'll probably be quite a few other folks. So, I don't have a good answer to that. I just, when I applied previously, it was a one-off. As far as a position being open, I think someone left or moved or what have you. And the one thing that comes to mind, just observationally, is because you guys were recruiting for a lot of things. So maybe other things look more appealing to folks. People sometimes tend to shy away from like rules and regulations if they're not used to dealing with that. So I unfortunately don't have further insight. So hopefully we can fix that.
Yeah. Do you enjoy the board?
I do.
You enjoy the work?
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
Do you think there's a good diverse array of backgrounds to be able to derive the decisions that they come to, and they're fair? And
yes, yeah, I definitely feel that. We have kind of our lawyer, our architect, our engineer. Like it's a very nice holistic board that I'm thankful for the composition of it often. So
and you think the decisions are fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other follow-up questions, Helen?
I have one. I was just curious, have you ever had the need to recuse yourself? from a decision? Or has
No,
that not happened?
yeah, I haven't been working on anything in South Burlington, and I maybe it goes. I should. It's worth saying that for Act 250, I work across a few districts rather, and I work primarily out of the southern districts, even though I live up here, and they would not put me on any South Burlington projects. So I do hear things now and then about projects that are happening here as well, but I don't touch them at the Natural Resources Board. So,
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your service.
yep.
Well, I think you're going to hear from us pretty soon.
Great. Thank you. Well, and thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate you listening to me when
One
you
more
probably
question.
didn't have to.
Do you have any friends?
I know. Well, as soon as you said that, I was like going through my
Exactly.
Rolodex.
Good.
So I will definitely think on it and let you all know because
You have to live in South Burlington.
yes, I know that's the tricky part, right? So, but we'll.
Good question, Tim. He's always thinking. Always thinking.
All right.
If anybody has questions about the DRB, I mean, I was chair a long time ago. I kind of remember how it works, but please contact me at home or email, whatever. I'd be glad to either point you to the right place or tell you what my impressions were and how much fun it was. It really is, it's a very interesting job because you get to see the city from a lot of different perspectives and how the LDRs are applied. You get into frustrating situations where you can't do anything, and you get into situations where you go, oh, we can maybe make a little bit of a finesse here, and and then you get to see that later on, 10 years down the road after something's built, you go, that's like that because we,
Right.
said something.
And it's a sense of ownership, and that I would think would be very rewarding. And I know nobody who knows the city like Tim, and I imagine Quinn, you're the same way. They know it frontwards and backwards and upside down. It's amazing.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time again.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we're going to be moving on to the Planning Commission, and Duncan. Oh, please. Did you want to say something about the Planning Commission?
So
Oh, I'm sorry. That's just because I'm looking
No,
at
the
the wrong
planning
sheet of
commission
paper.
is at
I
8:05.
apologize.
well, we do have 3 minutes technically to vamp until 7:30.
Well, isn't that close enough? No? Gift to what? Tim, second. Oh, Tim has to unplug his car? Okay, so a little 3-minute warning, a little 3-minute stretch. Very good.
I did appreciate seeing you bike in.
Which route do you take?
I go from the Pine Street area, one of the steep roads up, because it's an electric bike, so I don't have to worry about the steepness.
Nice.
And then come over the interstate bridge, and
You do.
yeah.
You feel safe doing that?
I put myself in the category of riders. There's a whole study that was done of different categories of riders.
Yep.
And there's about 5 to 10% of the riding population that has a lot of experience in a lot of different settings and is not terribly concerned. So I put myself in that category. So no, I'm not worried. And also I understand why a lot of other people find that to be a major obstacle.
Yeah. I found the scariest part was Williston Road, just east of the interstate.
There's no bike
with
lane
all
at
of the
that
curb
point.
cuts and
Right.
all.
So
Yeah.
that's where I turn up Dorset Street.
Right. Right.
Yes, that's much more difficult because there's nowhere for a rider to be. The sidewalk is only 5 feet. I have no interest
And
in
it's-
scaring pedestrians.
Yeah. Lots of uneven cement blocks there. All right. We're all back and convened and encouraging everybody to get out and ride their bikes safely. Item number 8, and I'm looking at now my agenda as opposed to my spreadsheet. We have a public hearing on land development regulation amendments, number LDR-23-01 and number LDR-23-02. We'll be looking at the solar photovoltaic cells for new buildings subject to Vermont commercial building energy standards, as well as some minor and technical amendments. And Paul, I would appreciate you just giving us a short synopsis of those amendments before we open the public hearing.
Absolutely. So Paul Connor, Director of Planning and Zoning. Also here in the audience this evening are two of the members of our Planning Commission, Michael Matag and Paul Ingalls. So the principal amendment that's in front of you this evening is regarding on-site photovoltaic systems. So this would build essentially on what you adopted in February of 2022. So new buildings that are subject to the commercial building energy standards at the state level, which is essentially commercial buildings and residential buildings that are more than 4 stories tall, are required in South Burlington to have a solar-ready zone on the roof. That has been the case in South Burlington since the adoption of the regulations in February of 2022, using an add-on to the state's energy code. So under this standard, those buildings would now be required to include the installation of a solar PV system on that solar-ready zone. So reasonably maximizing the physical space of that zone, and then there are some exceptions built in that if the utility, which is Green Mountain Power, were to say that it doesn't have the ability to take that power, that would be an exception if the building generates, if the building uses less power than would be generated, then it can be sized downward. It's not intended to require that somebody generate more power than they would use. And wherever there are exceptions on the state code about when you don't have to have a solar ready zone, there's certain circumstances where the building is really shaded or where the building isn't large enough, those exceptions would carry through to where you would not need to do it. But broadly speaking, new buildings subject to the commercial energy code would be required to install a photovoltaic system. They don't have to connect to the grid, but they can. So that is that piece. It would be subject, it would apply to any building that is seeking a zoning permit after the effective date of these regulations, including buildings that received a site plan approval since, or were submitted their site plan since last year when that standard came in. So if a building got a site plan submitted 4 months ago and they had not yet pulled their zoning permit for construction, it would apply to those buildings as well as anything new coming in. So that's essentially that one. The other one is really just some very minor clarification of language, making sure that we've got the lettering in the right place. Nothing of any material substance, just things that are beyond the threshold of what we can do without a approval. So it's just numbering and lettering and that kind of stuff.
Great.
That's what I have as my overview.
Thank you. All right, now I'll questions for Paul before we open the public hearing?
Yes. I was just thinking worst case here, like I do with a lot of things. Is there a requirement that the panels be tied into the electrical system for the building? In other words, I mean, worst case, somebody wants to honor the regulations, so they put one panel on the roof and they put a 12-volt light in an office or something like that. I mean, they would just barely meet it, and they wouldn't tie it into the. I mean, ideally, if they put some panels there and they didn't have a lot of demand and they tied it into their system, when the sun's shining, they would be using that power first, and their meter wouldn't be turning as much, so they'd be saving some money, which is a critical thing, right? But if we don't require them to tie into the electrical, the 110, 220, power lines in the building, then they could get around it, kind of?
Theoretically, yes. The way that it was written was to make clear that they don't have to connect into the grid, because that's not our legal authority.
Right.
To require Green Mountain Power to accept it, that is entirely under the Public Utilities Commission as a regulated utility at that point.
Right.
It doesn't say here that you must connect the solar panels to something in your building. So I guess in theory you could have a series of solar panels that are not doing anything.
Well, they could be doing something different, but not hooked up to the 110 or 220 circuits in the building.
Theoretically,
was
yes.
the original intent that it at least be hooked up to the internal
I think that the expectation is that most folks will take the opportunity to connect into the electrical grid, but as that's not our authority, we make it clear that it is not a required
Okay.
piece. We would then most likely anticipate that somebody would then connect it into their internal building if they chose not to. It doesn't specifically say that it must be connected into the building. I guess you could have panels with a dangling cord at the end of it.
Or just dangling cord with a 12-volt fluorescent light, you know,
Yes.
like a camp light or something like that.
Right. You would still have to maximize, you'd have to reasonably maximize the total area. So you couldn't just put one panel on. If you have 900 square feet, you would have to install 900 square feet worth of photovoltaic panels. So it would be a fairly substantial expense to then not have it.
Well, unless that didn't exceed the demand for the building, right? So if it's a warehouse and it just has lighting and nothing else, right, then they only need to use as much as they needed to meet some part of the demand of the building without being tied to.
Yep, that's true.
So, okay. I just wanted to point that out. And I mean, as time goes on, if we find people are trying to circumvent in that way, we might want to change the wording. I mean, I guess we'll learn, but it would be to a commercial investor's, you know, benefit to at least put enough, you know, on there to offset cooling, lighting,
I mean,
heating.
it would make sense. It would make sense for them to connect it into their utility bill.
Yeah.
Because
I
they
agree.
can,
Yeah.
you know, at a minimum, it is likely that the power, the payment that you received is equal to what you're being charged. And currently, and for the whole life of the system to date, there's an adder where you get a benefit of selling your power to the grid. So it would seem likely that most folks would choose to do that.
Good. Okay.
Tim, I'll also note that because of one of our other ordinances are probably also using electric for heating now. We'll probably have a fair electric draw.
And you mentioned UVM's RISE event, and I was reading the VT Digger and saw the article on the startup called Verde, which is amazing, which is, in fact, instead of having the solar panels, it's a film that they're developing, and they're working with MIT and other universities in the Northeast in order to develop something that is lighter and malleable. It could be put on the surface of an airplane or a car, for instance. And I was talking to the guy who didn't know about Hillside East, who's very much an entrepreneur and has done several things, including working with UVM and their startups. He said that this could be available in a year and a half. So I would imagine that this is not just panels. You said a system, so it could also include film, right? Like on the building exterior or rooftop or whatever, right? Yeah, so that's just amazing.
I think we're going to see prices on solar drop because there are some key components in China that the costs have dropped 30%, and they're going to start pumping these things out. And the tariffs have been suspended for 2 more years in the U.S. So I would think that solar should be getting more reasonable and is a number one choice for a lot of people.
And if I'm remembering correctly, this VT Digger, don't quote me on it, but in 1 hour, what lands on our planet could fuel our energy needs for a year. I believe that was what they said, which is amazing. So if we can simply concentrate it, it's amazing. So I think we need to open the public hearing because we could talk for hours about.
Would you like some wording on that?
Yes, please.
I move to open the public hearing on proposed amendments to the Land Development Regulations number LDR 23-01 and LDR 23-02.
Second.
Very good.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And so the public hearing is open.
Staff did not receive any written comments to share with you. So.
Very good. Anybody here to speak to these amendments? Please, Steve Crowley, and come up, and even though I stated your name, please identify yourself and make sure that the button is pushed and it's a bright green light on the microphone at the base. Hit it again.
Thanks. Thank you. Planning Commission to the rescue. Hi. Thanks for opening this up. I'm Steve Crowley. I live in Pleasant Ave in Queen City Park. Been a resident here for almost 40 years. And I just want to say thank you for all the work that everybody's done on this. And I want to strongly encourage you to adopt it. If anything, I guess I feel like it's not enough. We're, Vermont, right now we have about 5% is the small, tiny, minuscule bit of in-state solar that's required. And that's not nearly enough. We're not nearly on the right path yet. So the more that we can do here at the local level, the better. It's a little hazy outside, right? It's last week it was Nova Scotia. Today it's Quebec. 153 fires are burning in Quebec. So many that they have to let a bunch of them run out of control because they can't fight them. They're evacuating towns. They're sending people with respiratory issues to places where they'll be safe. There's air quality advisories expected here as a result of that in the next few days. Maybe it'll wash out. I don't know what the rain's going to do to it, but it's here and it's happening so much faster than people have predicted, and it's not going to slow down. So the more we can do, the better. One question, I guess, is as it was listening to the conversation here, comment about car charging. Is car charging part of a building's demand for electricity? It ought to be, it seems. If you're going to have a building and you have people coming to it in cars that are going to be using electricity, and we're going to be requiring charging, it seems like we ought to figure out how to work that in. And that's just going to grow, of course. So thank you. And keep up the good work.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come forward? Anybody online want to turn on their camera or turn on their mic and speak? Address these amendments? Okay, it's amazing now that we have computers. I was correct. And I am now quoting from this VT Digger article, and this is a UVM, who I am quoting specifically someone working on Verde, Bagden. Okay. Anyway, I'm just going to give the last name. Bagden said, we believe that solar has the greatest potential of any renewable technology to offset oil as the primary way that we produce electricity. 1 hour of solar energy hitting the earth is enough to meet the world's energy needs for an entire year.
Amazing.
That's right. All right. Thank you, Michael. So, if seeing no other comments,
Would you like a motion to close?
please.
I move to close the public hearing on proposed amendments to the Land Development Regulations number LDR 23-01 and LDR 23-02.
Any seconds?
Second?
Thank you, Helen. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, and that brings us to item number 9, which is possible action on these land development regulation amendments that we just discussed here.
Well, I would move approval as presented.
Thank you, Helen.
Second.
Very good. Any further discussion? All right, let's call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 That was unanimous, and thank you very much, Paul. Thank you to the
Thank you for your
Planning
time,
Commission.
everyone.
Thank you for all your work.
Can I say we should be very proud of ourselves as a city? I remember researching this a few years ago, and I think it's still true now, that there's only a handful of jurisdictions nationwide that have this requirement, and it makes so much sense. So really kudos to the city for being forward on this issue. really important.
Yep, yep, a lot to be proud of in the city, that's for sure. All right, now I get to take out my spreadsheet. I'm a little bit early though. I don't know if I'm too early. Let me just see who's in attendance. Paul is here and Michael is here. So, and who? Go ahead.
We have these four.
Yeah, we have 4 who are already here. Okay, so let's go ahead to item number 10 and begin interviewing candidates for the Planning Commission. And Jesse, would you just like to start us off here?
Sure. So just again, the council requested to interview all candidates for the Planning Commission and DRB because of the regulatory and statutory nature of these two bodies. So you have before you 5 candidates interviewing this evening. That includes your incumbent candidates as well.
Thank you very much. And so, incumbent candidates, well done. Duncan, you weren't here. We just expressed great pride in your work. We just passed the LDR amendments on the solar, the photovoltaic systems being required for all new commercial as well as any new zoning permits. So that's just wonderful work, and we take great pride and thank you for it. So you come right at the right time. Duncan, you're first up. If you're ready to go, you can step up to the podium. And we're very grateful to our incumbents to coming back and being willing to serve again.
Think that's working?
And we're a little bit more, how do I want to say? I don't know, but we actually have a set questions. And I'm going to ask them on behalf of the council and then provide time to you for you to ask us any questions and then give my counselors any time to ask any follow-up questions that they might have for you.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you. And you've served a very long time already. So we thank you for your years of service. And I really do appreciate the fact that you represent the business community so well. And the first question I have is, please explain your interest in this specific appointment.
I've been on the commission for 2016 is when I first came on, when we did the last comp plan. And it's been fascinating to watch what it takes to make a small city operate. But I really would like to finish the work on this comp plan. And that's the real reason I would like to be reappointed to. I kind of feel like I'd be walking away from something if I didn't do that. And I think it's been a pleasure to serve the city in this capacity, and I would like to continue to do so for a little longer.
Great, very good. And what do you hope? You just talked about the comp plan. Is there anything else you'd like to accomplish in addition to the comp plan that you could perhaps set out there as your own goals that you would bring forward?
I mean, I think that. Jess, I know you've talked about this, and we've all talked about it on the different commissions throughout the city. It's just the equity and justice and just transparency to really make the citizens feel like they're part of the process, as opposed to just being dictated down from above. To really, and I think that's one of the things that we've really tried to do this time around with the comp plan is really try to get people more involved and make it feel like it's really their comp plan, their comprehensive plan.
Thank you. And could you tell us about your role, what role you play on the Planning Commission and what skills you bring to it?
I'm one of 7 commissioners. I'm the vice chair right now, which is a thankless position. You know, I
agree, Duncan.
Yeah, I see you're chairing. No, I'm one of 7 people on the commission. I think we've got a good group of people. We don't always agree, but we respect each other. We respect each other's opinion. And I think that we all have what we hope is the city's best interest in our hopefully doing our work.
Great. Thank you. So the leadership there. Very good. And do you have any questions for us?
No.
Okay, very good. Any questions, follow-up questions for Duncan? Helen, do you have any follow-up questions for Duncan?
Just a comment, and I appreciate your service, and I'm really pleased that you're willing and interested to sign on for another term. I think you bring a an important voice. I think you're a thoughtful and quiet voice, but an effective one. And I think that helps make planning commission decisions often unanimous ones. And that's not always easy to accomplish. So I appreciate the role you play in that way.
Thank you, Helen.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. You're a consensus builder, and so I would add that to part of your leadership, that you bring people together. And I likewise thank you very much, Duncan, and we will be in touch very soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Next up is Michael Mittag. Also,
Good evening.
Good evening, and also a long-time member, not new to this at all. And if you could please explain your interest in continuing this specific appointment.
Well, first of all, I have served 2 terms, and so I'm very much invested in what the Planning Commission does. In those 2 terms, there's been a lot of on-the-job training because I'm not a planner, but I think I've learned a lot, and I'm retired, so I have the time and the interest and the energy to devote the considerable time that's required to do this job properly. So I think the Planning Commission is in the midst of something really critical at the moment, which is the drafting of the 2024 city plan, as it's called, or comprehensive plan. And I'm interested in being very, very much involved in that and making sure that we don't have any ambiguities in the language, so that the Commission has something very clear to work with. I'm also interested in, you probably all know, I'm an environmentalist in some way because I grew up on a farm. So I'm interested in making sure, or contributing at least, to making this comprehensive plan compatible with the climate action plan that the city has adopted. I think it's one of the most important aspects of this plan. So that's why I want to do it, and I love working with the people that are on the commission. It's collegial. It's the same size as my executive committee when I ran a business. So obviously I can't tell people what to do, but it's a very collaborative group of people, and we all work very well together, and I think we get things done.
Yeah, very good. I think you've answered the first 2 questions, in fact, unless you want to add anything to what you hope to accomplish with this service.
Well, I think some of the things that we accomplished were presented by Paul this evening, and a prior ordinance relating to the non-use of fossil fuels for heating and hot water of new residential buildings. I'm delighted to see, I think, the result of that, in that O'Brien is building 155 homes that are totally electric with battery backup. I think they see what's coming, and they know it's the right thing to do, and I believe they will find that it's less costly. But environmentally, it's a super responsible thing they've done, and they've followed what we set out in that ordinance. So I'm happy with what we did. There's lots of work to do, I think, in our environmental protection standards. and there will be work to do as a consequence of the passing of S100. And that's quite a long-term project. So I'm in for the long haul.
Very good. And if you could just tell us about how you work as a member of a group, what skills you bring to the table.
Well, I think in some sense my experience in running a business wasn't that big, 600 employees, maybe $110 million size company. It was a small kind of tech company, but it was part of a publicly traded, a subsidiary of a publicly traded company. So my experience in doing that, I think, is important in being able to work with diverse opinions and diverse people. I think my growing up in a household of architects and graphic designers, as well as my father had a master's in urban and regional planning, and I worked for him during my vacations. So I bring a little of that to my work on the Planning Commission. Obviously, I would love to influence the design of things we build, but that's not our bailiwick. But planning is urban planning is interesting, very interesting to me, and I think I've learned something, and I've also brought something to the commission in that area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So would you say you're kind of an ideas guy, someone who likes to
I'm an ideas guy.
push the envelope a little bit?
Yes, and I'm a sort of more like can do. If you grow up on a farm, you have to figure out how to do things, and so I don't believe that anything is too complicated or too complex or too big for us to do. I used to have a mantra, which is the degree of difficulty of a project is not the yardstick by which we will measure whether we're going to do it or not. So there's a lot of complex things that the Commission has to consider, and I like that challenge.
Great. Thank you very much. Any follow-up questions for us, Michael?
Well, thank you for what you do. Thank you for listening to the Planning Commission most of the time. And thank you for the trust that you've put in us. I think that's critical. It's a two-way street.
You're an important board.
Beg your pardon?
We simply enact all of your wonderful work.
You don't have to, though.
Oh, well, it's usually well vetted. Any follow-up questions from the counselors for Michael? Well, we just thank you very much for your years of service and for all you've done for our city. We're very, very thankful. Yeah. All right. Paul Engels, also an incumbent and someone who has served for a number of years on the Planning Commission. Yeah. Very good. So you didn't include the year that you started. Did you remember what year you started on the Planning Commission? I can't remember. Okay. It was in the teens. It was prior to COVID. That's what I remember. Maybe 2017 or yeah, or 2018. Yeah. All right. Very good. So please explain your interest in continuing this specific appointment, if you would.
Thanks. What'd you say? I was distracted.
Please describe or explain your interest in continuing in this appointment.
Oh, yeah. Well, for me, like one of the best times in life is when you have a great group of people together of like mind, working together to accomplish something. It's happened a few times in my life, and I recognize it whenever it does, and it's the good part of life. It really is. And we have that right now. We have that with the Planning Commission. We have that with you all. We have it with a lot of people who are involved in various boards and committees or just supporters. It's a good group we have here working on South Burlington government. We have good administration. I think we have the most dynamic city manager that the city of South Burlington has ever had. So, and also, we're right in the Planning Commission really is right in the hub of everything that's happening. We're working on the issues of the housing crisis, the issues of the climate crisis. I mean, we are grappling with what's happening. And as you said, we write the book and then we give it to you, but that comprehensive plan that we're working on right now, I think we're taking very seriously. And I think we're going to have a really great comprehensive plan. So, this is important work we're doing, and we've got a lot of people supporting us and great people to work with. So for me, that's why I want to be here.
Thank you very much. And what do you hope to accomplish with the service?
Well, as everybody said, we want to accomplish a really great comprehensive plan. I mean, that's the first thing to get done. That's what we're working on. We'll have a draft to you on the 27th of June, and we're going to open it up to the public right at the start, draft number 1, and try to involve everybody in the comprehensive plan. So that's, obviously job number 1. I personally have a lot of interest in the neighborhoods, so I want to see the neighborhoods well represented in the comprehensive plan. I'm always been a vote for the environment, so obviously the work that needs to be done on climate change and sustainability and protecting South Burlington from probably what's to come is really very important to all of us.
Thank you. And tell us about how you work as a member of a group. What skills do you bring to the table?
Well, I think I'm a good forward thinker. I think I'm a person who, has ideas and, gets them started and things roll out. I mean, I was a Mr. Form-based code. So, I don't think there would have been form-based code in South Burlington if I hadn't, said that I wanted to do that as part of interim zoning when I was on the city council. So, I feel like I can take credit for that. I put together that committee, did a good job. And I'm a decent writer too. I don't see myself as a great speaker. As a matter of fact, I see myself as a terrible speaker, but I'm a decent writer. I can express myself in the written word pretty well.
Great. And I would just reiterate that you really do focus on neighborhoods. I know that Chamberlain neighborhood has benefited from your leadership on not only the Planning Commission, but on the task force. The Chamberlain.
And they need our help again, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
You really want to hear the grassroots. You want to hear what they have to say.
I'd like to see that be a big part of our planning. You mentioned that there's a part of the statutes that allows for neighborhood associations. Yeah. I really, really would like to see us, push that and make that happen and get all the neighborhoods, grassroots stuff. Both involved in planning and in governance too. Yeah.
Well, maybe just again, we're getting down to getting the information out there and really communicating with people. Yeah, we don't all read the charter.
Right. I mean, I didn't know it was there, So.
Right. But yeah, no, I think that you're a very inclusive person. That I very much appreciate. Any follow-up questions for us?
I wanted to say something about the general work of the Planning Commission. Mm-hmm. I would like to see us become more concerned with visioning. We're hard little workers with our little axes and stuff. Making words. The comprehensive plan or the I'm going to say land use regulation in deference to Michael. But we don't spend a lot of time like really thinking the big thoughts and thinking of the big long range things and, what's South Burlington going to look like in 20 years or 50 years or whatever, I mean, I'd like to really have some part of the planning commission be visioning as well as planning. That's my big thought about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Any follow-up questions on the part of the counselors for Paul? Helen, anything?
No, I don't.
Thank you. All right. Well, I think
Well, that's either good or bad, right?
just a big thank you. Just a
Okay.
big thank you because the comprehensive plan, we've now heard from the 3 incumbents, and you've all been, this is your second rodeo.
Yeah.
And it's and the buck, it can buck you around a little bit, and
Yeah.
you hung
We've
on.
got a good group right now, so I think I really think we're gonna have a great comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Actually, I do have a question. I'm sorry. And this says, it's kind of a future thought for you, but have you ever considered a role on the DRB?
Yes.
Hmm.
What a horrible thought.
And okay, well, that's the answer.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've known Dawn for
It's
years.
not for everybody. I just thought I would ask because it's, it's kind of a follow-up from some of the things you've been doing. So.
Dawn and I are actually really good friends, and I've known her for probably 30 years, and she'd be a great person to work with. She's really a competent, capable person. But I don't think I want to do that kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Any others? All right. Just a big thank you then.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And keep up all of that good and careful work. It's the nitty gritty, the fine grain thinking that goes into these land development regulations. I know takes a lot of thought and careful balancing, and I just want to thank you for that. Yeah. All right. Michael Scanlon. Is he not yet here? We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was Steve. Hello again.
Hello. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. All right. Well, you've heard these questions before because you've applied, I think, twice already for this. This is wonderful. So, would you please explain your interest in the Planning Commission?
Sure. Yeah, I moved to South Burlington a year ago. I actually bought here 7 years ago. My family and I decided that this is the future we have. We moved here with an 11-year-old son, so we're obviously vested in where South Burlington goes as a community. We were very much attracted to South Burlington, primarily school system and the city plan and the vision you have. And also for me personally, having gone through a similar transformational process in the last 4 years when I oversaw a municipality of 80,000 in Bosnia to transform it into sort of a sustainable, future prosperous, and in this particular case, ethnically integrated community. It's an exciting process to be a part. South Burlington has very ambitious objectives, which I'm very happy for. And if I have any skills that I can contribute, would be grateful to participate.
Great. Thank you. And what do you hope to accomplish with this service on the Planning Commission?
Sure. I think I'm very impressed by all the work that is done by the people who have spoken so far and have applied so far, and obviously driven by the City Council vision. The big challenge I saw when I was doing a similar thing with this community was the sustainability issue. We had the same challenges of moving infrastructure out from the center to create a city center, to be sure that the areas outside the city center were continuously integrated, that the schools continue to generate the interest for people to stay, but also to attract the businesses that ultimately drive the challenges. And I think when I look to the vision, I applaud all the ambitions. One issue, of course, is the economic cost of doing this. And one of the challenges in local government in the United States is so much is driven by the costs that are put on housing. personal property taxes and bonds, and this is always a challenge. And I think one of the things we've seen we did there in terms of creating certain sort of economic growth areas, but as we've also seen in places like Falls Church, Virginia, where I lived when I was stateside, is to create sort of economic engines or compact, more dense areas, especially with businesses, to basically be sure that you can continue to generate the taxes necessary to supplement what is usually as we said, the personal property taxes, to do all the wonderful things that this community hopes to do and would like to do. And obviously, since we've chosen this to be our home for the long haul, we would also like to see. So I would like to bring that sort of perspective. I think we look at University Mall, we look at the development of the where all the medical facilities out by outside, you have it out by the airport. I mean, there are sort of areas that you basically can create more sort of economic activity. It's also a way, I think, ultimately to create, I think, what is ultimately necessary, whether it be a walking street, whether it be a green area. It's having grown up and always in Europe, having these, it's hard to envision a city without it. Whether that's going to be possible in the University Mall to integrate that into a walking street, whether it's worth revisiting the idea of the school just across the area of here in Falls Church. They were very creative in taking large school areas, consolidating the schools with modern design, being sure it has all the same facilities, all the same sort of opportunities, in many cases upgraded, but yet using the more clever design to create additional spot, whether it's for economic development, to raise funds, or in particularly this case, maybe a green spot area. So hopefully there are creative ideas that we can draw on, and in my particular case, from the experiences I've had, that I could bring to the great work that has already been done here.
Thank you very much. And would you tell us about how you work as part of a group and what skills you bring to the table?
Sure. Well, in general, my profession as a diplomat is about building consensus. It's about finding a way to achieve an objective, but in a sustainable way. As again, I mentioned, the last 4 years, the last assignment I had was overseeing this municipality with executive authorities. You always could basically impose things, but the challenge was to have the 3 different ethnic groups that fought together to come to some consensus on a shared vision. And it was about building a consensus. It takes time, and it also requires to have people realize that it takes time. It's not only to take time to come to a consensus, but also time to come to a vision. But I think ultimately you can convince people that, too often it's a zero-sum approach, or someone has a very passionate about a particular issue. If it's an all or nothing proposition, whatever your particular issue is, you're not going to be able to achieve that objective because you're going to have pushback on the other side. So it's about building compromise. It's about building consensus, and ultimately that leads to a win-win situation for people. And that's been sort of the mantra and the requirements of my work the last 32 years. So I think I'd bring that dynamic.
All right, very good. This is your chance now to ask us any
Sure.
follow-up
One
questions.
thing in Northern Virginia, which is, and especially communities like Falls Church and Arlington, that sort of are doing what, or have done what South Burlington is trying to do, which is move from sort of a suburban reality and framework and mindset of the people. And I'm still struck by so many people I meet in South Burlington who see South Burlington as a place to live and enjoy the rest of Vermont, great, and Burlington the center, but not necessarily seeing South Burlington as the there for them in terms of stuff. And one of the things that they've done is, again, I think, creating a place where you can congregate. Whether, have you seen in Europe, sometimes they just even every Saturday and Sunday, they just block off 2 blocks of the streets where the cafes can outflow or create a congregating area. But also the key thing is integrating the schools. And this is actually a question to you. I'm just curious, since that's going to be one of the follow-up questions. And both in Falls Church and Arlington, they integrate the city planning and the school planning very closely. And in fact, it's reflected in a common budget. And it is also reflected in sort of the city planning. And if you go to Falls Church City, the city planning, it lists, excellence in schools, whatever. And if you talk about equity, that's obviously the ultimate equity, is about creating excellent education for the whole community. It's also about creating a workforce that stays. Vermont tries so hard to attract people. We have homegrown talent. And it's also about creating the right environment for climate change education. I mean, so one of the things I was just wondering is, has it ever existed, or has there ever been any thought about more closely integrating the school component? And I've been attending the coffee and donut meetings with the superintendent, which is great, but it's almost like two separate conversations. And this is one community, and even though only 20% of the households have kids in it, it doesn't detract from the benefit to all the ones who don't have kids in terms of the other benefits it brings to the community that I just mentioned. So I just wonder, what's the history on that, or is there any thought of sort of integrating that more?
Well, we have, I think, a very young, in terms of years of service, school board. So the council and the school board members are going to meet over a meal. And I think some discussion in that regard will occur, and it will, of course, continue beyond that meal, since I unfortunately will be missing that meal and that conversation. But it's the steering committee meetings that we have 4 times a year are not sufficient. I agree with you, and I think that I'll let other people respond to you as well. That there are various conversations that go on between the 2 chairs of the board. So Helen Reilly in this case, and it is Alex McHenry, who is the chair of the school board, as well as the superintendent and our city manager, who sit down weekly or monthly to discuss, the bonding capacity. I think has been a real discussion, ongoing discussion. Traffic flow and kind of the design of the city center. And I can certainly pass the mic over to Jesse or to Helen to go on and explain, because they have a much more intimate view that then Helen would bring back to the council and Alex would bring back to the school board. Yeah.
I'll just jump in, but Helen, if you have other ideas, yes, and I think both points are really valid. I think we are doing an improving job of coordinating around logistics and short and medium term plans, and being really seeing each other as on the same team and pulling in the same direction. I think what you're suggesting is more that long-term vision, and I don't think we've necessarily gotten there as a city community and school community, at least in the 2 years I've been here. But I think that's part of what this rebuilding the relationship between the school board and the city council is about in the months to come.
And if I could ask one other question then.
And I would underscore that.
Okay, I'm very glad to hear that. I think it's, at least from our experience in Falls Church, it was really a strong component of building that community and on all aspects of it. The other thing is coordination. South Burlington is part of Chittenden County. And obviously public transport is a key thing. And we've heard a lot of talk about it. There were some great ideas in the various focus groups. And I was just wondering, how much sway does the city through funding or the city council through its actions have with the public transport system? Because you do have that circular route in South Burlington, but it basically leaves Shelburne out. Doesn't stop at Memorial Park, which I would have thought had been a no-brainer in terms of bringing people who will be living in the city center to there. I mean, you have biking and other things, but you also have people of different ages, and also just opening it up. And I'm just wondering, is that also an ongoing discussion? Is there a way to have weigh-in, especially now that the fares are coming back? I heard they have this technology like in Europe where you can flip the green lights so but they don't use it. If you're going to be competitive, you got to give advantages. So I'm just wondering, because I think that's going to be a key component of creating this integrated South Burlington and allowing people to access, regardless of where you live in South Burlington, all that South Burlington has to offer, because you're not going to be able to build a park in every single corner.
I'll start first, but please feel free, Helen or Jesse, to jump in here. I would say that we are a heavyweight in the county. Our staff is highly regarded, and really sources of expertise. And of course, we use the county staff as well. Our Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, they have staff with expertise. So there is a really good and strong relationship between our planning and Zoning Department, as well as our Planning Commission and the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. And I believe that that even goes on up, to the state level. And I'm just going to point out the reception of our city planner in the State House when we were discussing this S-100 bill that truly was, what's the correct adjective here? Will serve the state better thanks to our city planner, who has that kind of vision and that kind of expertise, and that is regarded and valued at the state level. So just to give you an idea, we have the best city planner in the state, and I would even say I could get really,
I wouldn't
really
debate that. I've been impressed by his,
go beyond.
his
So
engagements.
yeah,
But on the
and I
public
was with
transport
regard to this. I
to-
take the bus to work, and we are the only community other than Burlington to have a circulator bus. All right, would we benefit from more? Yes, and it all comes down to the Green Mountain Transit financing. They're already on a budget that is really tenuous. The state did extend the free funding till I believe the end of this year, and then I'll have to start charging. They'll start charging UVM again anyway, and it's a huge part of our climate action plan, and I can't state that enough. And it's a huge part of my sanity, to be quite honest with you. I don't commute. I sit and I read, and I don't have to worry about the weather or anything. I just am dropped off and I walk to my office. And I think that what it comes down to is, we Americans do not like being told we're taking this right away from you so that you do something that you should be doing. And it comes down to that consciousness raising, just like people, investing in heat pumps or in electrical vehicles or in solar, the photovoltaic systems that we just passed tonight. And that's the American way, right? And once we can open people's minds to that, and then the market follows, that's when the buses will follow. How can we, as a local board, stimulate that? I've certainly, called out from the mountaintop, just saying, hey, you're all out there in the slush and the muck and the ice, and I'm sitting here warm in a bus just reading my book. So, I mean, that's all I can do, I think, is try to lead by example. I'm open to other ideas, but I am with you. And I think that we need to do more to get people to our city center. There's already, I know, people that go between Route 7 and our city center, including young people that get back and forth. Are they doing it safely? I hope so. I certainly think that there's something to be said for changing that 189 to become more part of our green belt. That will only happen in 20 years' time at the minimum. But that would allow, I think, for a much safer transit system between those two major commercial areas of our city. So that's my answer. And we still have to crack that nut.
I would just like to say, I think you've raised some very pertinent issues, and they're spot on. And I hope that you'll be able to join one of our committees and bring your experience and expertise, because I think it sounds as if you've been there and you've done that. And that's sometimes what it takes, is someone to say, I know you can do this, and this is how you do it, and generate the movement forward. Will it be easy? No, and it probably won't happen in my lifetime, and we probably won't be finished in yours.
Don't say that, Helen. Don't say that, Helen.
But
we've got you for 20 more years. We're going to do it within a generation.
Well, maybe that's true. That would be good.
Yes.
But I think you're spot on, and I appreciate your ability to sort of think about those ideas and your experience in addressing them.
Thank you. Well, happy to help in any case. This it's my vested interest. This is the community I've chosen to
Sure.
be a part of, and I think the potential is phenomenal. It's just a question of getting from here to there. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Question?
Oh, yes, Tyler. So our follow-up questions from counselors. Right. We can't let you get away without being grilled. Okay.
Not grilled, not grilled, but genuine intellectual curiosity, because I think you've got a fascinating background. And I really think it could complement our city. Two questions. One, I think I would just like to better understand or ask for a little bit more clarification. You mentioned that you mentioned earlier about something along the lines of we keep thinking about things in terms of trying to, I think you put it, enjoy areas outside of South Burlington as opposed to creating areas where people could enjoy here. And that on one hand, that seems like that, which makes sense. And it's how do we make South Burlington less about the suburban ideal and more about a new envisioning of it. And that makes sense. It seems a little at odds with what you later said about thinking about the greater role of South Burlington in Chittenden County, and trying to think of South Burlington as a place where I believe your words were, you can't build a park in every corner of the city. So there are certain things we can't do here. And I'm just curious I hope you can help me reconcile those two
I think
things.
you perhaps misunderstood what I said. When I said that, yes, I'm, having lived in Falls Church, having lived in other smaller communities, there's a very much sense of, you're always talking about community, interacting with community. In South Burlington, I'm just struck by how many people I interact with the community outside of South Burlington, and their vision is outside of South Burlington, which is fine. Vermont has an endless, just like when I lived in Falls Church, Virginia, Washington, D.C., the waterfront, et cetera. You have all the Falls Church won't have it. But there was a core sort of day-to-day things, whether it's with kids, with family, with just not every day do you want to get in the car or get on the metro and go down to D.C. You want to be able to have accessible stuff. Just life simpler that way. So this is what I meant about South Burlington. When you're talking about South Burlington as a part of Chittenden County, that was more in terms of how does South Burlington access resources or leverage resources or have a voice. And this is what was coming to the public transportation. That's circular. It's great that we have a circular. But if you were speaking about just a South Burlington interest, that circular would also go up to Memorial Park, because people who live down here should be able to jump on a bus and go down to Memorial Park and enjoy it just like I can walk to. For me to get on a bus, I have to walk 29 minutes. I would prefer to walk to a bus in 5 minutes, sit on it, and go on it. And it would be nice also, I have to go down to, Shelburne and not have to deal with all the traffic and use your time more constructively. Because I think part of the public transportation, the joy of it is better use of time. Yes, you're driving, yes, you're listening to the radio, whatever, but you're not using the time as effectively or as enjoyably as you would. So my mention was, how does South Burlington leverage or influence the regional decisions that have an impact on the city's South Burlington specific life?
Okay, that clarifies. Thank you.
Sure.
Second follow-up question. You mentioned the resources that South Burlington can leverage outside and within Chittenden County. In your mind, what are the resources that the rest of Chittenden County, should be leveraging from South Burlington? What can South Burlington give back?
Well, I think that South Burlington, because uniquely going through this process of creating itself, can, I think, create some strong economic development centers, whether I think University Mall, and in my vision, when I've seen same compact areas with apartments of all different income levels, of walking streets around apartments, of areas where businesses are, can create an economic engine. The same thing I think is possible. I think it's where all the medical center issues, where they'll be building the surgery. I think you can create an economic engine. I mean, overall, one of the things that we've been just really struck by Vermont is the lack of people. Lack of people, not in the sense that, we want to live in a metropolitan area. No, we chose to live in a metropolitan area. but the lack of people necessary to basically cover the basic economic realities, whether in the schools, when I talk to the school board and they have empty positions, when I go to a store and it's, closed, come back, on Monday because we don't have staff for the weekend, when, you get together with friends and say, let's go out spontaneously Tuesday, and you find out, oh, it only works Wednesday through Thursday, Friday. So I think what South Burlington has the possibility is to create sort of a very vibrant, attractive, appealing, climate conscious model of what Vermont can be. It can sort of have its cake and eat its too. It can be a lovely, vibrant life, but it doesn't have to ruin the beauty and the nature that attracted us all here. But there has to be some vibrance. There has to be economic activity if this is going to be sustainable. I assume this is, one of the challenges. We thought that the school bond would be approved, things would, the possible rejigging of the school year would be changed, but obviously there's not an appetite for personal property taxes rising. I understand that. But therefore you need to find another way to generate it. And, Falls Church City has done a good job. Only 40% of their budget is personal property tax. More and more is commercial taxes of various sorts, property and otherwise. And I think, this is a way of we love Vermont. We want to stay here. We came here. We want to be sure that it continues to grow and is economically viable. And I think South Burlington is unique in Vermont because of its size, because of a certain amount of wealth, because of a certain amount of land it has in its location to create this great engine that will hopefully spin off for the greater bit of Chittenden County. And then we also get the return that we can leverage Chittenden County resources, especially I think in public transport, that will allow us to move around our own city in a much more sort of efficient and economical way.
Great. Thank you very much for the follow-up. I really
My pleasure.
appreciate it.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Michael. All right. So Ryan Doyle, you are online. If you would turn on your camera and your mic.
Right.
We hear you. Thank you. Hello, greetings. Thank you for joining
Hey.
us. Hi. So we are, we've met you before, so this is not our first time, but we're still going to have you explain your interest in this specific appointment.
Sure. I'd like to ask a quick question. The fellow before me, could you say his name again? Was it Michael Scanlon?
Scanlon, yes.
Scanlon. Michael, if you're still there, please get my email from Andrea Leo and shoot me a message. I'd love to talk with you about a few things sometime over coffee if you get the chance. Council, my interest in this board is that it encompasses so many different aspects of planning that interest me. I studied civil engineering and I've served on planning commission, city council, design advisory board before, those kinds of things. But I like that they're so interconnected. So as much as we can specialize in certain subsets or smaller groups, the planning commission really has to take a look at everything and how things integrate together. So like when we're looking at the current comprehensive plan, sometimes the discussion is where something actually goes because there is overlap, but also making sure that there isn't contradiction and things line up well. So if there's a transportation objective that also affects the climate, that we're making sure that those things really are in harmony with each other and don't create any impedance to each other. Some of the things that I like that are getting better with this current city plan than the previous one from 2016 is more specificity of language, as I think that might have been Michael Matang said earlier. I think also the objectives and the metrics, I think we can still do more there. In the 2016 version, there was more vague language that sounds really good, but doesn't necessarily connect to specific outcomes. And I think some of that's been improved. I think we can take that further because if we're not accurate enough, then the language isn't really clear for the city council and how to even interpret where those directions go. There's I've got all this time. I'm feeling better than last week for the last interview, but not good enough to walk in person. So, could you repeat the last question?
Yeah, well, I think you've expressed your interest, but you could say what do you hope to accomplish with this service?
Yeah, so in the immediate future, obviously, we're working on the comprehensive plan. I've been to a lot of those meetings this spring, and I do participate in the meetings, as is I email staff, ask questions. And so in the short term, it's making sure that we have a really good document that is accurate, is based on knowledge of how the real world actually operates, and to make sure that we put as much language about data in there as possible. A lot of times when we're on various boards, whether it is the Council Planning Commission or other, there'll be the question of, we would like to do this, but we don't have enough background information. And I know the city is going to be getting a GIS specialist soon, which really helps with this, but in all of the different subsections of the city plan, making sure that we list out what kind of data we need to keep track of so that we can make better decisions in the future. So making sure we're very articulate about those things in particular. Again, some sections have those things to a degree, other sections not so much. Going a little bit further in the, actually, no, I'll stay with that. Some areas where things get glossed over, we talk about affordable housing a lot, but we don't often talk about affordable commercial space. There's always this conflict with gentrification, and as a municipality is trying to develop in a way that gets higher value out of the land, then it can displace people of lower income. But just as effectively, we can displace commerce of lower income or lower margins, or especially when we look at minority-owned businesses, that they tend to get sidelined quite a bit in that kind of process. And I think we do need to take a really serious look at including some language to make sure that we don't lose sight of that in this plan. I could do other sections, but I don't want to be overly boring. I will make one more plug about housing, which is to include more alternative types of housing that can help keep housing costs lower, like cooperative housing, which is not common in the United States, but is really effective at lowering housing costs in other Canadian and European cities. So finding ways for us to include that language so the city can actually legislatively have models for that to happen in South Burlington. In the not so short term, I think, well, it's still pretty short term, but besides the city plan, I do think the city still needs to reevaluate its form-based codes and the official map. When we look at the buildings that are already taking place in city center, and we have first story front doors and railings that look like they belong on the back side of a warehouse, or we have a raised bed with really pointy metal directly abutting a sidewalk, we would consider these features austere, would be one word for it, which goes against the whole human scaled thing that we're trying to work toward, both with form-based code and with that principle in the comprehensive plan. I know others, Paul has brought it up before with the earlier visioning with the form-based codes and how, you know, things don't necessarily come out the way we intend. And so we, as soon as possible, as soon as the staff time is really there, to reevaluate those things so that we have fewer of those mistakes or gaps get through, and we can polish those things up. We can't regulate architectural style in the US, right? That's a First Amendment thing, but we can regulate other aspects of design. So in really other forms of architectural principles can be worked in so that buildings actually do look more human scaled rather than what look like the basic principles which have been put in our form-based codes that don't actually tie in fully to the concepts. So it's almost like a checkbox rather than meeting the legislative intent, we'll say. So there are areas that we want to look at, and there's places on the official map too that just bring up some concern as far as the way traffic can even flow or function when you're trying to move a certain number of vehicles on a street. The more stoplights you have, the less vehicles you can move. Obviously, last week I was interviewing for the Bike Ped Committee, and we talked a lot about those issues for the 3 of you that were at that meeting. Moving vehicles is still really important because we don't have a really effective transit system yet that can start to reduce the volume of vehicles on our streets. We're still kind of a long way out from that. And so making sure that our official map is setting us up for success in terms of not encumbering our transportation network, both in terms of vehicular traffic, but also making sure we can get bike ped users off of the busiest roads and have parallel routes. So I know a couple of you weren't at the interview last week for the Bike Ped Committee, but we did go in quite a bit of depth about that. You have other questions?
Yeah. So would you tell us about how you work as part of a group and what skills you bring to the table?
Yeah, so in a group, I don't function as a leadership type of person. I am a support role. It's usually my job to catch all, to figure out what's not being evaluated, to figure out maybe who's, and when I say who, I don't mean the people in the room, but the people who aren't in the room. What perspectives and viewpoints aren't being represented, and also what are possible long-term effects. Obviously, anything we pass has an effect, and some effects will be negative. So trying to do as much forward thinking, or if you play chess, that sort of thought, to look ahead and see where we're going to encounter some of those hiccups or troubles so that we can hedge them off the first time we pass legislation or write plans. And obviously nothing is perfect, but as much as we can save those hassles. I know right now some of the LDRs came back through. There were some concerns, and so we end up jumping back through some hoops again and taking up more meeting time. So workshopping those a little bit more and trying to imagine what kind of conflicts will arise from what we're writing down in the first place just saves us a lot of headache. So I tend to take those roles a lot more. And also secondarily, right, most people who are on boards tend to be, white, upper class folks. Obviously in South Burlington, there's a big divide regionally where people live based on income. And we have a wealth of people who apply to be on boards, which is absolutely fantastic. But there's a large swath of the population that just doesn't get represented very well. So it's really important to, have connection in those communities. Specifically, I worked a lot with disability communities and with youth. So having that perspective to bring in when we're making decisions is really helpful in the long term.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Do you have any questions for us?
I do. I was wondering, like in reading the TIF application, there is talk about the Central School property and also Mary Street.
Mm-hmm.
And as I look through the website, I don't always find what I'm looking for. I do email staff and ask for other documents and follow up in that regard. But I was wondering if things have been updated with TIF as far as the vision of where City Center is going and some of these areas that have been identified, but I haven't seen any projects come up for. And so that's one of my questions for you guys, if those things have been discussed or taken off the table.
What question specifically are you referring to, I guess?
Yeah, so in City Center, right, there was a TIF application, I think the year was 2012, and it mentioned specifically Mary Street and the Central School properties and areas for future redevelopment as part of City Center, but I haven't found projects or things relating to that since. So I didn't know if those had been taken off the table. It even kind of gets into Michael's question about integration with the school system. But are those areas being looked at still? Are there future plans about those areas?
Yeah, our city manager can respond to that.
So I think Brian, what you might be alluding to is the original application for the TIF district, which outlined a bunch of projects that has been updated. We did a substantial change request to VEPC in 2021, beginning of 2022, and fine-tune those projects. And those are the projects that came before the voters last town meeting day, which is the last TIF vote we as a community will take. So in terms of specific projects, those are outlined in the substantial change request VEPC approved.
Vermont Economic Progress Council.
So if I understand that correctly, that means those specific areas aren't really being looked at in terms of projects at this point, but maybe in the further future.
No, I think.
Can we get the question was do you have any questions for us in terms of just in general about the position on the board? Wasn't it an opportunity for you to get into great detail about past projects and project plans? So can you think of it more generically? Do you have any questions for us about the position or about the Planning Commission or?
No, I've served on a planning commission before. I go to planning commission meetings, I interact with Michael and Paul and other staff. So I don't have really any general questions there. I'm going to be more in the detailed side of questions. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. And councilors, do you have questions for? Yeah, thank you. Do you have councilors? Councilors, do you have questions for Ryan?
I do not.
The bewitching hour for me. No questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ryan. I appreciate it. You have clearly an interest in serving, and that is very much appreciated. So we will be in touch very soon, and your interview concludes our interviews. So thank you very much.
All right. Have a good night, you guys.
Yeah. Have a good night, and I love seeing you out. Are you outside? It's that beautiful out there. Oh, that's nice. All right. Well, enjoy. All right. So now we are going to be moving on to number 11, which is consider the process and recommendations from the council subcommittees on appointments to all city boards and committees.
Can we take a 3-minute break?
Oh, we can certainly take a break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are we ready? We'll reconvene here. And what I'd like to suggest to everybody, since Michael was interested in the topic of our other business, that we just move that item number 13 ahead of our number 11. And then we will have number 11, and that will.
What is 11 the actual? It's consider the process.
It's a 2-minute
okay,
speech from me about what we're going to do next.
I like speeches. Okay, I like your speeches too.
Yeah, it's kind of moving to the conclusion.
Especially if they're only 2 minutes, yeah.
Oh, wow! Oh, something changed. What
I
changed?
just have to say, I'm getting a little tired, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So 13.
So ash trees. Thank you. Everybody agrees, but we have the word from Helen that we keep it short and sweet.
Yes.
All right. So other business, ash trees.
So I spoke with this gentleman, Greg Rinaldo, from Teachers Tree Service, and he subsequently wrote us an email.
Yeah.
And he kind of impressed upon me that time is of the essence to take some proactive action with respect to our ash trees. And I think of this more as a logistical question than anything else, in the sense that his perspective was the ash borer is here in South Burlington,
Yep.
and that we may well wake up one day and find most of our ash trees infected and dying soon thereafter. And when you get to that point, it becomes really difficult to deal with the trees. They become brittle. They become much, much harder to remove because they're dangerous, and that we really want to avoid being in that situation. His recommendation, which made a lot of sense to me, for multiple reasons, not only for the one I just articulated, but for multiple reasons, which we can get into, was to start a program whereby you would treat a portion of the trees, let's call it 80%. The treatment lasts for 3 years. During that 3-year period, remove and replace the 20% that haven't been treated. Then the next 3-year period, call it years 4 to 6, you treat 60%, and you remove and replace another 20%, and so on, till the end of year 15, when you've removed and replaced all your ash trees in a kind of safe, controlled way, where then you're allowing the canopy behind it to redevelop so the neighborhood doesn't look like a desert. This made a lot of sense to me. He quoted that each tree costs about $120 to treat, lasts for 3 years, so call it $40 a year per tree. We have 600 ash trees, so $40 per year, 120 trees, call it $5,000 a year to treat. Seemed to me honestly a no-brainer to get moving on this and to get moving on it quickly, so I wanted to raise that here.
And we obviously can't discuss this in depth, but could we ask Jesse when this could be on a future agenda? Because this is something the Natural Resources and Conservation Committee has recommended, and it was under the ARPA requests. So we've been kind of patiently letting
it's a
that.
small amount of money. I mean, I would imagine, I don't know, we need to, I mean, personally, I don't think we need to wait to fold it into the ARPA discussion. I really think time is of the essence, and
But we still need to have a public meeting where we approve that.
Yeah,
So when
sure,
could that
okay.
happen, Jesse?
So right now, this is scheduled on your agenda planner for July 17th to have a full discussion. I do want to just inform the new counselors and remind the former counselor or the continuing counselors, you've talked about this 4 times since I've been here, and each time we've either approved funding to continue our plan or you've actively voted to continue our current plan of removing and replanting. We can revisit that, but that is an active vote the council has taken every year since I've been here. So happy to talk about it. It came up during public comment at our last meeting. I put it into the July 17th agenda planner. We can, so the challenge for the next couple of meetings is that we have the Juneteenth event, the policy retreat, the steering committee meeting, and this is on your next regular agenda. So we could put it into one of those other agendas, but I'd look for your guidance of what other content area you're willing to kind of shimmy down.
For that agenda?
So it's on your next regularly agended meeting on July 17th. Before that, the options you have is to add it to the Juneteenth celebration. The policies and strategies conversation, I think would be hard to add in one special thing to a whole strategic retreat. Then you have your steering committee meeting where you're setting the tax rate, and then the 17th.
I know I'd like to be nimble enough to discuss this sooner rather than later. I really think that
I guess I would also, I'm sorry, Andrew.
I think that we may wake up and find it's just too late to.
I just out of fairness and respect to all the other folks who've also on the 17th. We're talking about. We're resuming the conversation about ARPA, or is that where we would be talking about the ash trees?
Right now on the agenda planner on July 17th, it's a specific agenda
item.
In addition to other agenda items,
Yeah.
but a specific agenda item.
I mean, I'm already a little uncomfortable with the fact that we're fast tracking this particular item when there are a lot of other items that are of import to members of the community who are donating all their time to these committees who have put in requests through formal channels. I'm comfortable, given the urgent nature of this, expediting it to the 17th, but to move it up and then to push other agenda items further back, I feel like we also have an obligation to the rest of the community. I wouldn't be entirely comfortable moving it any further ahead than that.
Well, Tyler, we have discussed this quite a few times, and several committees have weighed in. So, you're concerned that we might not be addressing some other committee's concern by taking this up is just as valid for the Natural Resources Committee saying, hey, we've been talking about this for a couple of years and you haven't.
Right.
Well, we've addressed it, but I think there's new science or experience or information that suggests that maybe the decision we made was the wrong one.
So Helen, do you have a suggestion? I mean, would you have us arrive at 6 o'clock on Juneteenth to do it before the 6:30 kick off?
But, I mean, do you think we can figure it out in 30 minutes?
I do. And Tim seems to be saying yes.
Okay, well then
Okay
I'm
with that, Tim?
willing to do that a half hour early.
Okay.
So you're saying special start early at 6 o'clock on
Right.
the 19th? Okay. I do need to note, with all due respect, I think valuing a private business owner's opinion over your professional staff, public works director, and city arborist is a dangerous precedent to set. And I think, Tom and I have had conversations in the last couple of weeks where we've talked about this is going on July 17th. He and Craig are getting prepared for that, blah, blah, blah. I can ask him to fast track that up. I'm sure he will comply. He's very good at doing that. But I would just encourage us in the future, let's start with our professional experts and not start with private business owners. 6 o'clock on the 19th.
Okay. And if Tom and Craig cannot possibly make that date, would you just let Helen or me know if I'm in that loop? Helen specifically.
Sure, you're always in that loop.
Do we need to
Yeah.
consult with Colin? I mean, are we setting a precedent that could?
No, I mean, you
No?
guys can collect information from whoever you want to collect information from. Absolutely. That's not the problem. It's that we want to make sure we're giving our professionals who we employ the same respect as we are to the.
Right. And I believe that the NRCC got the information from the state level project. So just to make that clear. Okay, well, thank you. All right, so let's go back to item number 11. Oh, yes, Michael, I'm sorry.
And it will be brief.
Okay.
It is urgent because it's a matter of life and death of a living organism, namely the ash trees. It's my understanding that the trees can be treated for something like $62 per year, and that the cost of removing and replacing a tree is about $1,000. So there's a lot of $62 treatments that can be expended to save these trees before you've spent $1,000 or more. And I think the city and the council should try to save these trees, do everything in our power to save these trees. And if it costs $62 a year per tree, that is a bargain, in my view. And Andrew Chalnick is right. We can't wait. We've been messing around with this, as you've just said, for a year or two. And the information about treatment and the comparative costs of treating rather than replacing, and then removing and replacing, has been available all that time. I mean, I've known about it for a year or more. So that's my plea. When you get to discuss it, please seriously consider saving the trees by treating them. And this replacement schedule of doing 20% now, 20% then, that might be viable, but it's better to try and save them. And the ones that we can't save, the ones that die, have to be removed.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. All right.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Item number 11, I'm going to have Jesse explain to us the process and recommendations from the council subcommittees on appointments to all city boards and committees.
So the council all knows this is more for the community and for those who have applied. So as you know, you approved a process to appoint subcommittees to interview all the candidates. We have now gone through that process with the DRB and Planning Commission tonight. Each subcommittee has made a set of recommendations on who to appoint. In tonight's executive session, we will talk about those recommendations. The full council is totally has the authority to appoint anyone they want, that you do not need to take the recommendation of the subcommittee. You have all the applications. You can make whatever decisions you want, but will be discussed in executive session and then will be approved on the consent agenda in theory on the 19th as well. Staff will notify candidates following that meeting. And July 13th, very exciting night, is our committee orientation, as we did last year. So Colin and I will be welcoming anyone who serves on boards and committees to that orientation on July 13th, and certainly council is welcome to attend as well. So that's really all I want to say to go over what the process was going to be.
Great. Thank you. All right, and now we are going to move to convene as the South Burlington Liquor Control Commission to consider liquor licenses to Quarry Hill Club, Farmers and Foragers, and Myers Wood Fired.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All
Aye.
right. That's unanimous. We are now the Liquor Control Commission of South Burlington. And is there a motion?
I move approval of the three applications.
Second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 That was unanimous. Thank you very much.
I move that we come out of
Liquor Control.
Liquor Control Commission.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. We are back into our regular session as the council, and now we will consider entering a possible executive session for the purpose of discussing appointments to boards and committees.
Would you like the motion?
Please.
I move that the board enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, or evaluation of public officers or employees, inviting in Jesse Baker with the council.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
We will not be coming back.
we will not be coming back. So thank you very much for attending and for doing all of the tech work there in the background. And we will be going somewhere or staying here?